I'd like to call the Village of Riverside Board of Trustees regular meeting for Thursday, November 17th, 2022 to order. If we can all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk Sol, will you please call the roll?
President Ballerini.
Here.
Trustee Evans.
Here.
Trustee Gallegos.
Here.
Trustee Marshazga.
Here.
Trustee Hannan.
Here.
Trustee Pollock.
Here.
Manager Francis.
Here.
Attorney Mars.
Here.
Also present, Clerk Sol.
Thank you. President's report. The only thing I have for the President's report tonight is I wish everyone a happy and healthy Thanksgiving. Manager?
Thank you. I only have one item this evening as well, and it's just to remind residents that village offices will be closed for the Thanksgiving holiday on November 24th and November 25th. That's it.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is residents' comments. Is this an opportunity for members of the audience to speak about matters that are not included on the agenda? Is there any resident that would like to speak? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Ethan, if you would, please.
Approve voucher list of bills, November 17th, 2022. Review and file finance September report. Review and file community development, public works, police and fire October reports. Approve village board of trustees regular meeting minutes November 3rd, 2022. Review and file economic development commission special meeting minutes September 13th, 2022. Review and file 2023 meeting schedule. A resolution authorizing the village manager to waive competitive bidding and execute a sales agreement with Griffin Systems for a total amount not to exceed $68,325 for the purchase of a closed-circuit television camera surveillance system. A resolution amending the Village of Riverside Employee Manual, Section 3.24, relative to health and dental insurance. A resolution of the Village of Riverside, Illinois, waiving competitive bidding and authorizing the village manager to execute a sales agreement with Curry Motors for a total amount not to exceed $53,329 for the purchase of a 2023 Ford F-50 utility dump truck. A resolution authorizing the sale or disposal of personal property owned by the Village of Riverside. A resolution authorizing an intergovernmental agreement for participation in the mutual aid box alarm system. A resolution authorizing the village manager to create a purchase order in the amount of $42,486 for the purchase of rock salt from Cargill Incorporated for 2022 and 2023 snow and ice control.
Thank you, Ethan. Do any of these items need to be removed by any of the trustees? Hearing none, if I can ask for a motion.
So moved.
Motion by trustee Gallegos, second.
Second.
Second by trustee Marshazga. Clerk Sol, if you please call the roll.
Trustee Evans.
Aye.
Trustee Gallegos.
Aye.
Trustee Hannan.
Aye.
Trustee Pollock.
Aye.
Trustee Marshazga.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next on the agenda is department, board, and commission reports. Tonight, we have Chairperson Mateo from the Planning and Zoning Commission who would like to outline our 2023, or their 2023 budget plan.
It's my pleasure to present the plan on behalf of the Planning and Zoning Commission. You may recall our 2022 project work plan involved the TOD zoning code update, as well as readdressing standards for how we calculate permeable surfaces. Well, we got the first one done, but we didn't take a bite into the second one for various reasons, so that is going to be at the top of our list for 2023. We also want to discuss parkway trees and the ordinances that pertain to them, such as we require 2. How are we enforcing that? Should we be enforcing it? What if in development a tree is taken down? Is there a minimum diameter tree that would be required in its place? We're going to look at our special use reviews to see if our standards can be further clarified. We're going to consider incentives for going green in our properties. And then there are a couple of other issues that came up during the zoning code update, such as assisted living facilities and independent living facilities. Where should we allow them? We've had many discussions about the minimum drive aisle width, so we're looking forward to getting back to that. And then to discuss maximum heights of houses in the R1A and R1AA. Any questions?
Any questions for Chairperson Mateo?
All right, hopefully no more 3-hour meetings for everybody to watch. Thank you.
Well, we appreciate everything planning and zoning does. I don't think we know exactly all that you do until we are handed this, this new TOD. It's a lot of work, so we appreciate what you did to get us there. Next on pending business, recommended fee increases and code amendments for 2023. Director Johns.
Good evening. Presented before you tonight are some minor fee adjustments and code amendments for the 2023 fiscal year. The first one I wanted to discuss tonight was adjusting the due date of vehicle stickers and pet licenses from July 1st to October 1st. This will require a code amendment, have limited budgetary impact, but will decrease the amount of overtime required and the stress of the front desk operations by making the vehicle sticker renewal period separate from the large influx of building permits.
Do you want to take these one at a time and just make sure we have consensus? Anyone have an issue with moving it to October 1st?
No issue here.
Okay. Sound.
Next on the list is vehicle sticker / pet license fee adjustments. We've discussed this at previous meetings, and I did include in your packet a survey of other communities' vehicle sticker fees. Currently, fees start at $90. Late fees are $10 a month for 6 months, and if you have still not purchased a vehicle sticker by that time, a $50 police citation is added. Couple items for consideration. Staff would like to know, I'm sorry. At previous meetings, we talked about really wanting to gain compliance for vehicle stickers. So early next year, we will do a reconciliation against the Secretary of State's list. Question for the board is, would you like us just to collect for the 2022 to 2023 vehicle sticker, or would you like us to also collect for previous years in arrears where the vehicle was registered but they did not purchase a sticker?
So if I understand, our option is to, if you come up with somebody in 2023, that you're going to tell them they need to buy a sticker, or we can collect back to 2022?
We can, so this would happen around March of 2023, so they'd be paying for their sticker that was due July 1st, 2022. If they also did not buy a sticker in 2021, we could go after that sticker and in previous years.
And is there a penalty also?
It would be the penalty also,
So the sticker fee plus 50,
60.
60, okay. Mr. Hannan?
A couple issues I'd like to raise. I think this effort was undertaken several years ago with the Secretary of State information, and a lot of feedback was received with sort of the tone of the letter, especially realizing after the fact that a lot of the Secretary of State information was either dated or wrong, or a lot of confusion arose. So just want to sort of learn from that and maybe suggest that the tone of the letter be more of an inquiry than an assessment of a fine. That, maybe, and this goes into your question, maybe give them a period to respond. Do you still own the vehicle? Do you not own the vehicle? Contact us and let us know what it is. If they don't respond to that, then the current fee is assessed. If you don't hear from them after a period of time after that, then it's the full 2-year look back, if that's what they've done. So give them a chance to come clean and, get on, get on the books for this year, because then we can monitor them, once they're on system. Every year we just check our own system as opposed to have to rely on that. But I'd like to give residents a chance to get on the books, so to speak, and just pay 1 year. But if they're going to delay and not take advantage of us reaching out to them, then, you know, after a period of time, it's the double year.
So my understanding from that is, correct me if I'm wrong, that comes March, we find out that you have an extra car in your driveway. You come clean, you say, yes, I'm sorry, I have that. The village would then charge you the 2022 sticker of 90,
Yes.
and then we would have you going forward. If you deny it and we find out that you actually do have it, then we would go back as far as we could, 2 years.
Yes.
With fines.
Yes.
Can we do that?
The thing that I want to make sure that we don't lose is there are people that were invoiced for their 2022 sticker, that the late fees has been added, and by that point, a ticket would be added as well. So we've contacted them up to 6 times already by this process. They would still be responsible for paying those late fees and those citations.
Yeah, my view is if you're non-responsive, there's no,
Right.
you know, you should not get the benefit of the compliance.
Okay. But if you're responsive, you would not get, you would, I just think, if you didn't buy a sticker, I think there should be some penalty. I mean, they know they're supposed to buy a sticker. So, I mean, it doesn't make sense that it's just the $90 plus the 60, so $150 for the fact that you didn't buy a sticker, and we won't go back any farther. Ms. Trist?
Yes. Is it accurate that if a person did not buy a 2022 sticker for a car that we have in the system from previous years, that the village has in fact followed up with them and they would be subject to these penalties already, or not?
So let's go back to 2021. If you
Right.
didn't buy your 2021 sticker, you were given out police citations, you went to collections to get that ticket and that vehicle sticker plus late fee cost. However, we do not renew that sticker and send you an invoice for 2022 if you never paid your 2021. So that's kind of how you drop off the village's list, not to give away too many secrets. But, so we could go back to the last year that they paid a sticker. And we can definitely work on softening the tone, and giving, if you still owe the vehicle, please pay this amount by this date, or provide us information that you have disposed of the vehicle, and also please update your records with the Secretary of State.
Like,
Everybody?
So
So
we're,
everyone will be held accountable for the tickets that they owe us for, or for the years that they owe us for without a ticket. Everyone's going to be accountable for all of the fees back to 2021.
That's the question, is do we take
that's
it
the
back?
question, and it's not just back to 2021, it would be to the last time they purchased a vehicle sticker. So the last time we did the Secretary of State analysis was 2019. So do they owe 2020, 2021, and 2022 stickers? Or do we just want them to pay 2022 stickers plus late fees, and we'll give you an amnesty or a pass on those other vehicle stickers that you did not purchase?
Kind of a carrot and a stick. That, so we collect 1 year, and then the next year we get them back on the books.
They'd pay in March, and then they'd pay in September for the next year. So they'd pay twice in 1 year.
Mr. Pollack?
I think I understand that you're saying that if someone hasn't missed a year, whatever year it was, it could be 1972 in theory, but they missed a year and we know it and we have evidence of it, we're going to reach out to them and say, hey, our records indicate, please clarify the tone. But if they come and pay for a 2023 sticker, they don't have to pay for the old
2022.
one?
They would have to pay we would hold them accountable for 2022 plus fees, and then the new 2023 sticker. So we're actually giving them, we're actually saying, if you come and get up to date, we won't go back to 2017 or, I mean, that's what the way it's being laid out. We don't have to do that, obviously. Do whatever you all wish.
Also, the records that I get from the Secretary of State is what they have currently registered to the 60546 zip code. So it wouldn't necessarily tell me in 1972 this vehicle was registered to a Riverside address.
Right. Ms. Evans?
I would be agreeable to a one-time amnesty just this time, 1 year. And then just moving forward, everyone needs to pay for their vehicle stickers every year. They're expensive. You don't just
Yeah.
get to have a year off.
Right. I agree 100%. So I think we'll give them the amnesty for past years, except for, but they would need to pay 2022 the fee and then the new sticker for 2023.
And the late fees associated with the 2022.
Correct.
Okay.
That good? Doug?
I suppose if that's what the board wants to do, I just feel like it's kind of unfair to people who have paid.
I agree. I agree. So then the option is we can go back to 2019, correct?
Correct.
Which would be another year. 2 more years,
It
sorry.
would be 22, 21, and 20, so it would be 3 years.
So it'd be, they would owe us
Four.
$240.
A minimum, with late fees, a minimum of $450, because they start at $150 with the 6-month late fees.
Okay, so it'd be $300 to come in to do, then you have to pay another $90 come.
Come September.
I mean, I understand Trustee Pollak's point. I just want to give people an opportunity to act promptly, especially given the coming out of the pandemic and a lot was going on. You know, I'd rather get people in compliance if they're going to open the mail, say, holy cow, pick up the phone, call the village, pay 2022, get right, and move on. I'd like to incentivize people to do that.
I am in agreement, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
if not for the pandemic, I would also.
Okay, Ms. Evans? You good with that?
Yeah, it's a one-time amnesty.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. Move on.
Staff frequently gets questions regarding discounts for seniors, antique vehicles, and motorcycles. Would the village board like to institute any of these discounts?
How many antique vehicles do we have?
We can't, I don't know the exact number of antique plates in Riverside, but vehicles more than 25 years old, which is what qualifies for an antique vehicle plate, is 224. Currently having a vehicle sticker.
It's a lot more than I would. My thought is, if you have an antique vehicle that just happens to be a 1975 Eldorado, and you drive it on the streets like everyone else does, you should pay the full vehicle sticker. But if you have an antique vehicle and go through the state and get an antique vehicle license plate, there are restrictions that go with that antique vehicle license plate. You
Correct.
can only drive it to and from certain places, you can only drive it so many hours. That's kind of that's the same thing that I would think we'd want to do with any kind of discount we give. Disabled veterans, they need to have disabled license plates. Antique vehicles need to have an antique vehicle license plates. Do we know how many motorcycles we have?
We have 86 current motorcycle vehicle tags.
Okay. So now you know the ramifications. Any thoughts? And seniors, I think Trustee Marshaga brought this up when we did the water meters, that maybe, seniors, if they're on a fixed income, or if they can prove state help, then we would do, something has to be proved, because,
If they meet the qualifications with the Secretary of State for the low-income reduced license fees. If they meet those thresholds, and that's tied to the vehicle,
Yeah.
then they should.
I think we need to have an accountability to the residents who are paying $90, that if we do this, that we need to have, we need to make sure that they're actually what they are. So, with all that laid out, and the numbers that except we don't know how many actually antique vehicle tags there are, but who knows?
We don't know how many antique vehicle plates there are. Also, to clarify, our current code reads for disabled veterans, you need to show us proof that you are a disabled veteran or former POW. We do not require the veteran plate.
Okay, as long as there's a trail that we have that. Okay, so,
I am going to drive my convertible in the middle of winter and get my money's worth.
okay. Do you have antique vehicles, tags?
Yeah, it's a 1969.
Any taste for reducing for these particular groups? Right now, we do for the disabled veterans.
Senior citizens, just like as outlined by Trustee Marshaska.
For the low income.
Yeah, for the low income, they qualify for the state, it's easy to verify.
Okay.
Shouldn't be a burden on us.
Antique vehicles and motorcycles, we move on? Okay, so we'll stay with the disabled veterans and the seniors that have state.
Are you looking at a 50% discount or 25% discount? We need to codify the dollar amount of what the reduction would be for seniors.
What's the percentage discount that the state gives them for their license plates?
I don't know that.
What,
I'd like to
and I'm
do that.
sorry, I should have, I looked at your thing and I was looking at the price. I know several villages do that. What is their, do they give 50% or 25%?
It's not always a direct percentage discount. I believe some is just a nominal fee.
We could set it at $25 if we wanted. I mean, that brings it down to $65. Does that
Or
make
perhaps we could start with a 50% discount to see how many people actually apply for it and use it the first year, so we'd have a better judge of the budgetary impact.
I'd be comfortable with that. 50% off? Yeah.
If you are operating on a low income, it feels, 45 still feels high.
I-
25%.
That's less.
So it's
than-
75%
that's-
off.
Oh, it's
that what
75, it's 50% off, I thought. Isn't that what you were?
Right.
50% off would mean the vehicle
40.
stickers would start at $45.
So you're saying you want to do it more than
Lower than 45.
I think 45 is fine.
50%?
I'm comfortable with 50% off, then we can revisit it if there's,
I think so too. We'll give that a try for starters.
Ms. Pollock? Mr. Hannon?
Yeah, I agreed with 50%.
Okay.
Or pet tags, next. Currently, the village charges $10 per pet tag for dogs and cats. One $5 late fee is applied if not received on time. In doing the survey, we saw a lot of other communities do charge a surcharge for non-spayed or non-neutered pets. Would you like to institute a surcharge for having a non-fixed pet? We already check for inoculation records, so we'd be able to check for a one-time spay or neutering record at that same time.
I mean, I don't think that we have a problem with, like stray cats or stray dogs.
We have seen an increase in the number of strays, and that has had a budgetary impact. We've had to do a new partnership with a animal care hospital, so we have someplace to take the pets to. We have seen an uptick in that, so there has been a slight budgetary impact to that effect.
My thing is, I just think the people that allow their animals to get out and propagate in the neighborhood didn't buy a pet license in the first place. So, but that's me.
I don't see a need to address it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ms. Pollack?
I agree.
Okay. All right, we move on.
Adjustments to the BNSF contract for the number of commuter spaces. Proposed before you is the idea to reduce the number of spots in the contract from 150 to 100 spots. Currently, we have a lot of spots open in Lot 1. I cannot sell any more 24-hour spots because I need to reserve that 150 for commuters. I floated this idea to BNSF, and they seem open to that reduction.
Yeah, I would,
Good.
I'm fine with it.
yeah.
Okay.
You also, not giving a specific spot to a specific person in some of the commuter lots. I think you told us before that there is villages that oversell a particular lot because nobody uses them on it. How does that work? And is that something?
That's definitely an option for the village, and we have looked at that in the past. Right now, our Lot 1 is probably the least sold that it's been in quite some time due to the metro ridership. So I think now would be a good time to do it. I think in our 24-hour lots, residents are used to parking in that one spot, and there's not an availability to oversell. So I would look at only commuter lots. For plowing purposes, I'd like to assign a spot to the 24-hour people along the edges, so it's easier for Public Works to plow the lot. But the rest would be, if you have a spot in Lot 1, you can park anywhere in Lot 1. This would allow us in the future to discuss overselling if we see the demand tick up. It would also allow us to sell an overnight pass and a commuter pass. You wouldn't want a 1-to-1 ratio in that, but there'd be that slight overlap that would allow some greater flexibility and greater use of that lot.
Any thoughts about at least exploring that farther? Well, first of all, we can't do much because Lot 8, which is the commuter lot, we've all stated that we're going to hang on to that for a year while our Quincy experiment. So
Correct.
that's going to be at least another 5 months.
It could also be that they could park anywhere in those commuter spots in Lot 8 instead of a specific spot.
So let's keep that on the burner and
Okay.
bring us back a proposal when we get close to having all of our lots open.
Okay.
Is that good with everybody? Okay. We move
I
on.
will say that would make some people that rent a spot very happy. There are certain spots that are slightly less desirable. So if that is your spot and it's under a flowering tree or close to a stanchion and you have a little bit larger of a car, that would make some people very happy that that's not their spot every single day.
Okay, good. That's what we're here for.
Okay. Quarterly and hourly permit fees. Before you today is a chart that shows how the quarterly and hourly parking fees would have increased by CPI if they would have been adjusted on an annual basis. The last time we updated these fees was in 2017. So I am recommending that we amend the Metra agreement to increase quarterly parking rates to $170 a quarter and hourly parking rates to $30. They would then increase in the code on an annual basis, starting with the second quarter of 2023, and increase to $150 for quarterly, and then it would increase to $160 in 2024, $165, and $170 in subsequent years
That's per quarter.
per quarter.
Okay. Any questions, any thoughts? Yes, Mr. Pollack?
If someone buys a commuter permit, $105 per quarter, what's the times of day that gives them? Is it?
It gives them, I believe it's from 5 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Okay.
It might be 8 p.m.
5 days a week?
5 days a week, excluding holidays.
Yeah, I mean, right now, the monthly pass on Metro is $100. So I'm struggling with, how do we charge $150 to park your car, and that costs less than taking the train downtown?
It's $150 a quarter,
$150 a quarter.
so $50
So
a month.
$50 a quarter.
So $50 a month. And just for clarity, I didn't notice that other villages do resident and non-resident rate. That is not available to us.
That is not available to us because our lots are ultimately owned by BNSF.
It's 100 in Berwyn. I know a lot of people park in Riverside, go to Berwyn too.
Well, a lot of people go to Berwyn because that's an AB.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah. So thoughts? Go ahead.
I'm okay with the increases. It's just cost of living adjustments, basically. The fees have not gone up, so in effect, they've gone down over the years. And so we're just trying to catch up to the cost of living, and maybe there'll be a bonus where a few people will decide to walk instead of drive to the station.
That will work for our sustainability issue.
Right.
There you go. Is that it's good with that?
It's not going to
CPI?
make much difference, because nobody really is using the spots anyway.
I think this gets us through 2027, so hoping that Metro ridership increases during that time frame.
And we spent a lot of money on our parking lots to make them green. It costs more, it's more expensive to maintain them. We have nice lighting in and then a lot of them, so they're not cheap.
And the parking lot fund currently has a negative fund balance because of low ridership and the capital improvements that are needed or have been accomplished, but there's also the need for more in upcoming years.
Okay. All right.
Quarterly 24-hour parking also has a similar chart with the CPI increases. I would recommend, again, starting second quarter of 2023, slowly ratcheting these up by estimated CPI amounts.
That.
24?
Next, we have a proposed change in the variation fee, changing the deposit for a variation from $500 to $1,000. This is based on the actual time that we're seeing, actual costs for legal review and posting notices. So this saves us from having to go back to people requesting a variation for additional funds.
But it costs, I mean, Doug, can you, the cost of a variation?
Well, from my experience, but I mean, Ashley and Jessica could probably comment on that too, but it comes down to, are you trying to cover all of your costs or just your hard direct costs? Hard direct costs being the newspaper publication, the stamps for mailing letters, stuff like that. But all of your costs, I mean, a variation, to process and manage a variation through the process, I can imagine costs several $1,000s for the village when you add in the time spent and money we're paying staff to handle it.
And legal fees.
And legal fees, right. I mean, legal fees you could cover as a hard cost too, but, so it's just a matter of, how much do you want to subsidize someone asking for a variation? Because there's no way to reasonably recuperate all of your costs.
Okay, that substantiates it for me. I'm fine with that increase then.
Is it a deposit or a fee?
It's a fee.
It's a deposit.
So they get it back?
If it's not fully expended, they will get a portion of it back. Or if they withdraw before, so if they pay the deposit and they withdraw before we put it in the newspaper, we would only subtract for any legal time spent on it. We would refund the balance.
Yes, Doug?
From your experience, how often have we refunded anything on the $500 fee?
we're most often asking for more money.
Right.
Yeah.
Just to cover, and what that covers is publication,
Legal.
mailing notice, and legal, any legal bills on that particular case? Okay.
Correct.
Given what I just said, I think the board should consider, I'm not sure how I feel about it, but should consider that it be a fee instead of a deposit, because we're always going to spend more money processing a variation, as I just described.
Except if they pull it before the publication, correct?
Yeah.
We could create something similar to Director or Assistant Village Manager's Monroe's item later in the agenda, that if they pull the permit before costs are incurred, they would be eligible for a certain type
A
of
partial
refund.
Okay. So we would move to a fee base of $1,000. And then you okay over there? Okay,
Yes, I proposed it.
okay.
I'm okay with it.
All right.
Changes to building plan review fees. Staff recommends amending the code to state that the plan review cost will be billed out at the rate of direct cost to the village. Anything you
Yeah, so just to clarify, so for instance, we have review fees for both building plan review, fire systems, fire prevention systems, and engineering. And so the code currently speaks to us reviewing things, a lot of plans in-house, and that had been when we had in-house inspectors, plan reviewer. And so as we rely to a greater extent on third-party review, we'd just like to make sure that the code addresses our direct costs and being able to replace those with billing for those specific amounts.
If it covers our costs, and that's fine with me.
Yeah.
Everybody good with covering the costs?
That's fair.
Okay.
Changes to the building plan review deposits. This is also used on a deposit system, but staff recommends establishing plan review deposits in the amount of $500 for accessory buildings, swimming pools, and commercial remodel or expansion, and $150 for those permits requiring a grading review.
Again, it's capturing our costs.
Correct.
I'm fine with that, too.
Would the board like this to remain a deposit or transition it to a fee like we just discussed for a building plan review?
Well, what is $500, is that generally what it costs, or is it?
It's very close to what it costs the village. Ashley, do you want to talk about where you?
Yeah, so we have there's a variety of fees established through our third-party agreement for current building department services. And so, for instance, if you were to review an accessory building like a detached garage, the review cost billed to the village is $325. So that would cover an initial review and, a variety of either a re-review, which would be 50% of that cost. So basically that $500 is captured. $500 is currently the amount that we charge as a deposit that can be refunded for remodels, additions, and any projects over $100,000. So it's mirroring that, direct cost to the village. Any balance outside of that amount is either covered through the building plan review or, the building permit base fee, so we can account for that. And then anything beyond that amount incurred for the plan review is added to that permit cost. So the $500 is an estimate for those accessory buildings or swimming pools. We typically have a grading review, for example, from engineering between $175 to anywhere about $400 for engineering, depending on the complexity of the issue. So we took our best estimates as to what those costs would be. A general commercial remodeling plan review starts at $400, and that's been typical of past years as well. So it would capture the majority of our cost and the cost of the permit, but we could modify our operations, whether it's a fee or continue it to be a deposit, either way.
I would think we want to stay with the fee base because that's the way we've kind of working. And correct?
It's currently been a deposit.
Yeah, I'm saying, but that's the way we've outlined variations and other things. I mean, it's just, I think it's less work for staff.
It is.
Than trying to then calculate all the costs and send somebody back a small check.
It is.
Doesn't seem like we're collecting exorbitant amount over what, and generally we would be subsidizing.
Correct.
Be basically that with me.
Mr. Pollack?
And it's a similar consideration as with a variation fee. What costs are you trying to capture? Just the hard direct costs for our plan review consultant, or staff's time taking in the plans, processing it, file stamping it,
Legal.
communications, there's a lot of other costs that we could capture if we wanted. My suggestion would be, and President Ballerine and Manager Francis, I talked to you earlier this week about this. My thought would be to proceed as staff has recommended here for now, but I think I'd like to see that as a project for next year for staff to look at our building permit fee structure and see how, if it makes sense to restructure it so that we make sure we capture not only the cost, our direct cost, but our indirect cost too. I mean, I don't know how else to put it, but we should be making money off of building permits. And it sounds like right now we're breaking even, at least on the plan review side of it. Because we should be making money to pay for the people who, the only reason they're here is because, or the main reason they're here is because they're processing building permits. Not suggesting we could recapture 100% of that, but we should be capturing some of that.
So if I understand correctly, you agree with this to be a fee now, and we would then do a little bit more in-depth dive for next year for this time, same time?
Yeah, we'll revisit that.
Okay, is that good? Everybody? Nod.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
The last one is to adjust the fee table for building department inspections. Staff recommends setting the base fee of inspections for $100 for building and HVAC inspections and $75 for parkway and right-of-way inspections. The reason for this price differential is the amount of time it takes to do each of those inspections.
I know there's been a question that said, why would we pay ourselves less than we pay a HVAC inspection? That why don't we just keep both of those at $100?
The reason why there's been that differential in the past is it takes less time for that. So the building and HVAC inspections, even when we were doing them in-house, those are typically a longer inspection than a parkway of right-of-way inspection. So I feel we're covering our costs on both.
Okay.
It's just the time or the cost it takes.
Okay, fair enough. Question answered. Thank you.
Okay.
There's just one other item as part of that request, just making sure that the board is okay with establishing a fee of 1.5 times the rate of inspections for the off hours or after hours inspections. So for example, if there's a special event that's being held and we need to ask our inspector to come at 7 PM on a Friday to inspect for the next day, that we have a rate established or can allow for a rate being established at what we're being charged for that after hours. Or if we were to have staff in-house that needs to perform overtime at some point, that we have that within our code to charge for that inspection. Is that okay?
We're covering, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We will have an ordinance at our first December meeting outlining those fee changes for board approval.
Okay. All right, thank you, Karen. Appreciate it. We move on to the discussion of ordinance amending the zoning map of the Village of Riverside and establishing the transit-oriented development commercial district. Assistant Village Manager Moreau and Planner Siren. Who would like to start?
I'll start us off with the agenda history sheet, and then Village Planner Ann Siren has some notes as follow-up from previous week's discussions with the board. So this particular item is presented as the fourth ordinance we came up with as part of our Planning and Zoning Commission public hearings related to transit-oriented developments. So remember, this is a zoning sub-district that's being proposed for approximately 14 properties along Harlem Avenue. This is the zoning district that would be a new kind of overlay to the existing B1 commercial zoning district. We held a public hearing with the Planning and Zoning Commission on August 24th, 2022 to review the proposed zoning map changes and see if there was additional public comment related to the proposal to rezone those 14 properties between 3144 South Harlem Avenue, which is north of Addison Road, to 3422 South Harlem Avenue, just north of Lawton Road. There was not any public commentary at the meeting. Staff received a phone call from a adjacent community business asking questions about parking, but there was no one present at the meeting. No property owners expressed concern or any comment, either in favor or against having this rezoning. And overall, the Planning and Zoning Commission did agree that with a vote of 6-0 in favor of establishing the transit-oriented development commercial sub-district to change that zoning. So the finding of fact was attached in your packet and expresses the kind of highlights of the reasons for this meeting the standards to change the zoning. So we have that as one item, right? And I can allow any discussion you have or questions regarding the ordinance itself and the area in which we've, worked with the steering committee, the Planning and Zoning Commission over the last year and a half or so has been available to the public to review.
Go ahead.
I was just going to comment also that it's not an action item this evening, it's for discussion. So you don't need to vote on whether this is accepted or taking place tonight. Thank you.
Planner Sam, would you like to go through some of your findings?
Absolutely. Thank you. Good evening. The board had expressed some interest in comparing the proposed changes to the ordinance with neighboring communities, and also some interest about creating possibly an overlay district or some sort of different zoning area for the area near the railroad. And I provided, and I'll go through this at your desk, a diagram that we can review. And I'll briefly touch on these topics. I'd be happy to go into them in more detail. In terms of side and rear yards, that was an area that, if you looked at the tables, is a little bit different than other communities. So if you look at this diagram, this shows you the current and proposed front, side, and rear yards for two adjacent properties. This is at the corner of Harlem and Burlington, you can see. And I believe these are both owned by the village currently. So the 3320 South Harlem Avenue, the non-square shaped parcel, is currently in the B1C district. Next to it is 363 to 369 East Burlington, which is located in the B1TC district, the transition district. So there's slightly different regulations that apply to each. So the green areas show you the front, side, and rear setbacks, or excuse me, yards that are required for those properties. And it's important to remember that a yard doesn't mean necessarily green space. It means open space. It means that a building can't be in that area. So if you look at this area, the remaining white space on each property shows you effectively the building envelope. With the current and proposed changes, there's no proposed change to those side yards. If you approve these ordinances, what you see in front of you is what you'd have after the ordinance was approved. So you can see from this that in the B1C district, which is at 3320 Harlem Avenue site, the yards push the building envelope more towards the road. Now, in consideration of this, if you think about the regulation on parking, now you can have parking on the side and rear in the B1C district, you can't have it in front of the building. So naturally, most folks are not going without a special use. So most folks, if they're developing that property, they're not going to put the parking in front of the building anyway. And also the yards would encourage the use of parking behind the building. If you take a look at the second page, just as an exercise in what you could develop. So this is an example of a 3-story building. And that's important to remember, looking back at the first page, that our example was for buildings above 2 floors. So this is the most restrictive. Now, if you have a building that's 2 stories or under, those yards are significantly less. This is the most restrictive that you could have. So let's say that you've got a 3-story building. We're going to say, you can see the building there blacked out. It's got an outdoor patio. Let's say it's a microbrewery and they've got an outdoor eating area. So the patio there, you can see in white, kind of a sidewalk around the building, the drive aisle, parking, and a trash enclosure in the corner. Obviously, you're kind of maximizing the site in this case. You wouldn't even have to have this much parking under our current ordinance. You would need to account for stormwater, so this may not be realistic in terms of how people want to develop their site, but you could develop a site like this. And this would all be legal in the current zoning.
It's a very small building.
It depends on your use, I suppose. So I've got, for a 3-story building, I have 8,000 square feet total. Now that is over 3 stories. If you're talking about a restaurant use, I think your average chain Outback Steakhouse is like 6,000 square feet or something like that. So if that gives you a sense of how big that would be. So in considering whether to keep the side and rear yards, that shows you can, I think, somewhat reasonably develop with those side and rear yards because you can have the parking in the yard areas and have the building towards the street. Now, in the example that we gave you of a development in a neighboring community, I believe it's Foxford, they maximize the entire site. Now, if that assumes you have surface parking. If you have parking under the building, your building can't be in your yard area, that is a restriction. So if you look at the chart that was provided about just a comparison of this chart here on the second page.
These are starting kind of in.
Oh, thank you, Ashley.
So in packet, the item that Ann's referring to starts on page 205. So there's a separate memo that she prepared about zoning and parking standards with recent comparable developments, and there's multiple charts. So which one are you referring to?
This one is the zoning standards for arterial streets, similar to Harlem Avenue.
Okay.
In
so
neighboring communities.
Page 208.
So it's a little bit wider. Yep.
Yeah.
And so you can just see here on the comparables, you'll notice a couple of differences. So none of the comparable communities have a minimum building height. Most of them have a minimal, the front setback seems rather comparable. But the interior side setbacks, you can see a lot of communities just don't have those setback requirements.
And I'm assuming that the reason they don't have these setback requirements is to allow more flexibility on the property.
That would be my assumption.
I mean, if I look at this plan here, let's just say this is a Dunkin' Donuts or your Pete's Ice Cream or whatever the ice cream thing is.
Sure.
I think it's problematic that these are in two different zoning districts, so we either need to extend the TOD or we do the overlay where these can be, because right now, if you wanted to do a drive aisle and develop both of these pieces of property, you can't do it, because a drive aisle is not a drive aisle is not permitted in a B1 TC, correct? Not even by a special use.
That's correct.
So that takes a drive aisle totally out of the 363, 369 property unless we get that included somehow.
And I did want to mention that. I've got in the packet included kind of the area in question where the zoning is, the only area of B1 TC is this Burlington Avenue corridor. It's that light blue zoning. So the area that Trustee Ballery mentioned is the area that's highlighted on this map. I think if you shifted that red box and took a look at that B1 area that's in light blue next to the dark blue B1s are proposed to be in the TOD district. The B1 in the light blue is not proposed to change. And you can see the examples that we're using here at the top of the right-hand side of the red corner. That property is the one where we did the example of the brew pub. Right next to it is that B1 TC zone property. So just to give some context, and to your point, if there's interest in expanding that B1 TOD zoning district down this area, you're looking at higher density, taller buildings. Impacts on neighbors are negligible along the south edge of the East Burlington Street, kind of that bottom edge. On the top edge, it looks like the only property that would really be negatively affected is this parcel here. There are two parcels here that back up onto this parcel, which is a residence. I think having a tall structure on these parcels, any taller than they currently are, would be a negative impact on this parcel. So the majority.
That's the last two parcels right on the corner
It's
of
the
Burlington?
last two parcels, yeah.
So that's Orland Dental and,
Yeah, it's a multifamily condo building, it looks like,
that's on the other side. The condo building is on the
right here.
track side.
Okay.
Oh, then, yes, then you have the condos along there
The
too.
condos and then the dentist, yeah.
Right. Okay, the
Yeah.
first one is the dental.
Yep, right there in the corner is the
Right, okay.
dental, and then next to it.
Okay, but they already have a multi-building across the street from them. The condo, there's a condo building right across the street that's 3 stories.
At 315,
I'm sorry?
Yes.
at 315, the parcel 315.
Go ahead, Mr. Pollack.
That is a condo building, yes.
And you said that in the B1 TC, drive aisles are not permitted?
I believe that's correct.
So you
I
can't have
would
a
wanna
parking
fact check.
lot?
I'm sorry?
You can't have a parking lot?
Drive-through, not drive aisle.
Drive-through.
Drive-through,
I'm sorry.
thank you.
I meant- I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
sure.
Yes. Good catch.
So kind of two larger points there. One, do we need these rear and side yard in the B1 TOD district? And then it doesn't make any sense to expand the B1 TOD district down to the B1 TC area, with maybe the exception of those two parcels.
Okay.
Okay. Just a couple other quick notes. Office uses on ground floors, mixed, of 8 communities that we looked at, 5 did allow them, 3 did not. And that's a change that we're proposing, is to limit those office uses on ground floors. Another change, prohibiting dwellings on ground floors. All the communities, save for Western Springs, prohibit dwellings on ground floors, so we're in line there. Minimum building heights was the only other standout item and difference between other communities. I believe Western Springs has a minimum facade requirement, minimum building height of 18 feet. We have the minimum facade requirement of 18 feet. All the other communities did not have a minimum building height.
Okay. Okay. I think this frozen custard thing was very telling. How many variations someone would have to go through in Riverside versus other communities. I think this is an opportunity. I mean, I think we have to look at a couple different things. One is the TOD as it is very small in depth.
Yes.
So, I mean, we can't be too restrictive because of the fact that the footprint of the properties are not even a block deep, or not even, probably not more than 30 feet deep on a lot of the properties. I mean, if you look at that whole stretch, except for when you get to the ends, like you'll have a condo where the upholstery guy is in, across from the new Goodfellas. That condo stretches all the way back, but all the other places next to it, to the south of it, don't have that same depth because there's an alley back there. So they're very small properties. So it worries me that some of the restrictions that we're putting on the TOD is going to be difficult to develop those properties. And plus it makes, I mean, they're saying 24 feet high, and if you do any additions or any movement, you have to come into 24 feet. That's almost half of those properties. I mean, that's the whole block next to the two-story, including Sherwin-Williams that's just being built. I don't know how big the old petroleum, but it's the gas station would not be able to add on. Fuente, or the burrito place, that would not be. And again, if you notice the depth of where the burrito guy is, he's shallow because he has the alley behind him, but the apartment next to him is much deeper. So I think our goal, I think this is our chance, once in 25 years, to try to make a difference. And I don't know, you know, I don't want to. I think we all want to try to spur development in our village. We want to make it easier. So I think what you did here is great. But I'd love to task staff to look at all of the special uses and permitted uses and a lot of these different things. I mean, just the one thing about the 363 and the other piece, them, you know, those things being zoned differently makes it very difficult. If you try to build what you did here, and this is the ice cream parlor or whatever, so you would have to walk through the drive aisle to get to the entrance of the building. I mean, there's no way of getting to the entrance. You'd either walk down Harlan and have to come around the front, assuming the front is at the patio, or the front could be at the back of the building, but you'd have to walk across a drive aisle. I don't think that makes sense for this type of development. So I want to be able to, and then, you know, a couple other things that I looked at. You know, what is personal services? Trustee Pollack brought up that included several, could include a lot of different things. I'd like to get to know what that is. What is personal services? Is that a spa? Is that, you know, a masseuse? Is that a tattoo? Is that whatever? What does that include? The idea of the train overlay was to allow the setbacks to come back to the train. So we would then have the bigger frontage. Does that make sense? I don't know. That's, you know, I'm not a planner, but does that make sense along our train? Because our train is different than, you know, like I say, it comes into, once it crosses Harlem, I'm sorry, but the train tracks become an alley until it leaves Riverside. So how do we treat that area to the best possible way? So plan review. Right now, we have multiple levels for plan review. Should plan review, I'd like to know what other villages do. Do plan review, can that be done administratively? And again, the B1TC and you know, for example, if we had a dispensary wanted to come into the 363, 369, it's not even permitted in that area. Is that what we want? Maybe that is what we want. I don't know that, but I think we need to look at all the different businesses that we're trying to do and why development is happening around us, but it's missing us. I mean, Sherwin-Williams was a great win, but as Bob said, it's not sexy, but it's the first time that we've had that property generating sales tax in 5 decades. And we need to do that. So I mean, that's.
No, I
Yeah.
concur with what you're saying.
I echo that, and in prior meetings, I've expressed concern about our minimum building height, you know, understand it for the central business district in theory, you know, really don't understand it in other places. This chart confirmed for me that we're not consistent with our surrounding neighborhoods or, you know, comparable neighborhoods. I agree that the setbacks concern me, that, you know, if we are looking for development, you know, we don't want to put in items that are going to make these parcels undevelopable, unbuildable. I mean, that just doesn't make sense to me. And I think what hits home is that under these proposals, Sherwin-Williams couldn't happen, which tells me we're doing the wrong thing.
So, you know, I think our goal is Ashley just finished the table for parts 1 and 2. So she'll put this in all of your emails tonight, so you can get these or have them printed, so you can take a look at this. Take a look at, you know, think about again, let's look at this and see how we could be a very welcoming community, respectful of our historic nature. That, Mr. Pollack?
A couple things. Sherwin-Williams, the only thing that they would be non-conforming as to if we approved all these amendments would be building height. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
They would have had to be 6 feet taller than they are now.
Yeah. Yes.
So it still would have been allowed to be built. They just, again, would have to be 6 feet tall. I'm fine looking at all this. I mean, we certainly need to be open-minded about finding ways to encourage development. But I would caution everybody that, I mean, you're comparing it to fast food restaurants on LaGrange Road. Is that what the residents want? Do they want drive-through? Do they want standalone, one-story restaurants with parking in the front yard and drive aisles all 4 sides of the building, that type of thing? And if that's worth the money that these businesses can bring into the community, then we should consider it. But I just, you know, be aware of, you know, the changes that you're wanting to consider could have, I think, a material impact on appearance of this area.
I don't disagree. But I think the area we're talking about is Harlem, and anything we could do on Harlem to better what we have is I mean, if we can get a Dunkin' Donuts fast food on Harlem, I would take it all day long. Would I want it to replace, you know, Riverside Bank? No, but, you know, on Harlem, I think it's a different set of things. That's why we're suggesting this overlay. Ms. Oska.
Well, we've been talking a little bit now about getting the pulse of the community and what kind of development they want and what they would like things to look like. But yet, when it comes to the hearings that, you know, planning and zoning had and the various opportunities they had via Zoom for people to come forward, they didn't, because it's very daunting. Maybe, no, I'm sorry. It's not accessible. People go, oh, you're changing the zoning, and, you know,
Yeah.
the eyes glaze over. But maybe it would be helpful to us to kind of get a pulse or a read on what people want if we were to put together a quick survey with different photographic examples of what Harlem Avenue could look like in different places. So for example, in Oak Park, you have many, multi-story tall developments along a busy street. And down another section of Harlem, in another community, you may have, lots of fast food and drive-through restaurants. Some may have tattoo parlors and, money exchanges. I don't know. But whatever, you can capture, maybe do 3 or 4 preference ranking options for residents. And I bet they'd be really interested and engaged because people love these visual things. And so that would provide a little more feedback for us as to what the look and feel for that, highly trafficked area should be according to our residents.
I just don't know how you, there's just not that much land available on Harlem, believe it or not. We think
No,
about
I
it,
know.
there really isn't.
I know, but it's like it's a stretch of a block on a busy street,
Go ahead.
I mean, what
You
we
may.
could do is a Survey Monkey with like we've done in the past with like a handful of questions, because obviously you don't want it to be too
Right.
lengthy because
Right.
people disengage. But maybe with, here are some options of what could be done on Harlem Avenue, and then give their feedback. And then we could bring it back to the board, and if there's additional feedback, we can kind of, do a subsequent survey to kind of solicit additional feedback. So at least, if nothing else, you're attempting another method of public engagement. And
Go ahead, Doug, I'm sorry.
I like that idea, especially, and definitely if it includes a visual preference survey, where we show images of something like this frozen custard place that we just saw versus a more traditional development that would be allowed under current regulations, and have people look at that and say, what do you like or don't like about it?
we may have to do a hyperlink, because I'm not sure of what the visual limitations are of Survey Monkey.
You probably have,
be
we
able
could
to.
probably post it on our website somewhere, like a TOD webpage. But there might be the option to include the image in there. I'm just not sure.
Yeah, if we gave pictures of the ice cream, even the summary, the building on Western Springs. We're not looking at building what's downtown Oak Park, 60-story places, but some different things. Yeah, that's, go ahead, Mr. Hannon.
And I think it's important, number one, to clarify that this is Harlem Avenue, that we're not talking
The downtown.
the downtown area.
Yeah.
That has to be abundantly clear, because people are rightly so very emotional about the downtown area. I get that. I respect that. But what I'd also like in there is, some discussion on the impact to village finances on economic development. Because you can't talk about what you like in here, what it should look like, without also looking at the sales tax dollars that could help us offset certain costs of what goes on. And not have to increase our fees, not have to, charge residents, full price for water meters. To generate some sort of sales tax revenue allows things in the village to become less costly. And that can't be excluded from this discussion.
I agree. And that's what's hard to get through, because people see pictures and they like them or not like them, and then, it just, there are further ramifications that need to be flushed out. So Ethan, if you guys want to work on something like that, that's great. If in tandem, if we can continue to bring us, look at, now that we have it all, I ask everyone to look at it and put Post-it notes, and, which I have a lot of them, and set your questions in the staff and say, why is this? Why is this?
Yeah.
Is this going to work? And things like that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
One question that was raised by Village Planner Siren is having the overlay, extending that TOD down Burlington, which I don't know if we talked about it, but I think that's an idea worth exploring.
Yes.
I like that idea of that's your front door of Riverside, but also understand that, you know, it's part of that commuter district, that you do want density, you do want to utilize the Harlem Avenue train station, you do want walkability, so have that cut off, you know, right off Harlem. I'd love to hear some more thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think we're all on the board with either a TOD extension or some sort of train overlay and how that works, so. I don't want to speak for anybody, but.
No, I'm in favor as well.
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Can I just go through my list so that we know what the deliverables are for the next meeting, just so everybody's on board? Staff is going to provide a more detailed definition of personal services with what that includes. We'll survey communities and find out what communities are doing for plan review and whether or not that's done administratively. And then we'll update the tables based on the board's consensus thus far, so the tables that Ashley's put together, and kind of note in a different color any changes or consensus that we've received thus far along the way. And we will then include staff's recommendations based on comp data that we've compiled. And then once we have direction, so it may be not only next meeting, but the first meeting in January, once we have consensus on those items, then we would tackle updates to the ordinances. Additionally, we will create the survey to solicit some feedback. And with that, we'll have kind of an introductory paragraph, just kind of explaining economic development, benefits of having these different amenities, additional sales tax, what that sales tax does for the community, et cetera, and incorporation of that zoning overlay for the BNSF. Am I missing anything?
I think that's perfect, Ms. Pollak.
Just one quick question on the site plan review. I would be interested, I'm somewhat interested in knowing what other communities are doing, but I think that may not be informative for us. But what I would like to see is a little background on when we've done site plan reviews in the village, and has it added value to the final project? Or how has it added value? Certainly it adds value in transparency, but does it add other value? And because there's a cost too, it delays a project, you know, it's another month, 30, 60 days the developer has to spend, et cetera. So there's costs and benefits, but I want to see how we have used the site plan review and whether it's added value, benefits outweighing the costs, to development in the village.
Thank you. Thank you for all the work. I really appreciate it. This is, again, I commend PZZ for taking this on from 2019 on. It's a lot of work, and things have changed since 2019 also. I mean, we're not the same village we were in 2019. We're not the same country we were in 2019. So I think we all have to move, and I think we all want to spur development. We all want to spur sales tax, but we want to be respectful of our historic nature, and we want development, but we want good development. Okay? Thank you very much. We move on for the update on accessory building and text amendments. Planner Siren, please. And before you start, I'd like to thank Doug for all the work that you did with this. Your hands are all over this. You're in the minutes quite a bit, so thank you very much for doing that.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Just a brief update. We intend to bring this forward for a public hearing to the Planning and Zoning Commission for their December meeting. The Planning and Zoning Commission discussed this twice since it was reviewed by the board, and the summary of the changes are listed in the materials, the October 26th memo that was included in your packet to the PZC. A summary of the comments that the board gave us, and then you can see in the board minutes for their last meeting, a summation on the 8th page of their discussion from that meeting. If you have any specific questions, I'd be happy to address them. I can discuss some of the highlighted options or just leave it at that for you.
Does anybody have any questions about this? Mr. Pollak.
Not a question, but just to add a couple of comments. There's still a couple of issues that I think planning and zoning need to flesh out, but I'm very pleased with what Planning and Zoning Commission has done, and I look forward, hopefully, the board's support to proceed with a public hearing.
I just have a couple of comments, and one is one that you had made at the meeting. There's like 4 paragraphs describing this 45-degree angle and all this other stuff, which is a planner's delight. But when you said, why don't we just make it 1 foot more of thing for every foot over 13 feet, I can't find it here, and it's exactly the same. It's exactly, pretty much the same setback. I think simpler is better, because angles change or whatever, what happens, so. I know I expressed that to you, Doug, the other day when we were there. Does that make sense? You know, I know the pool thing is an issue. I mean, we don't know what a pool is. I think our pool said it has to be 20 square feet or something like that. I mean, I think we need to flush what a pool house or what a pool house is. And personally, I think I think a shower is not going to turn a house into a dwelling. It just doesn't seem like, I think we're over concerned with turning these things into dwellings. These are not, if someone's going to do this, this is not inexpensive to do. And they're not going to do it just to rent it out for, you know, a couple $100 or $500 a month or whatever. It's just, I think, whatever. I just think we're a little too concerned about these things becoming dwellings. I don't think they're going to pop up a lot. I think I stated one time I was listening to a planning and zoning meeting in Oak Park, and a guy wanted to put an extra story on his house. And one of the commissioners said, why don't you just put a second floor in your garage? Because we allow that. And he goes, it's cheaper for me to put a 3rd floor or an extra floor on my house than it is to put an extra floor on my garage, because I have to run the sewers, I have to run the electrical, whatever, HVAC. So I don't think this is going to, a lot of people are going to take us up on this, but those that do, I don't think they're going to put them in apartments. But, you know, that's just my thought. Any other thoughts? Okay, so everyone feels comfortable with it the way it's written? Okay.
Okay.
Just, you can express that and maybe make it the 45 simpler would be great. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ann. We move on to new business. We have an ordinance amending the village code of the village Riverside relative to land disturbing activities. Ms. Monroe.
Thank you. So we have a variety of building activities that occur in Riverside, and most commonly projects like detached garages, home additions, patios, swimming pools. All of these should require grading review. And so our code, section 413.3, relates to land disturbing activities. This is the section that our engineer reviews and refers to as they look at proposed, building projects. For well over the last 5 years or so, the village's practice has been to recommend installation of some type of stormwater storage as a way to offset water on a private lot. It's recommended for residential properties because MWRD, so the Water Reclamation District, regulates commercial properties. And so what we have proposed is a modification of our existing village code to incorporate and codify our recommendations and practice. So this would be required for all projects as the ordinance draft. We include definitions, for one thing, for stormwater storage plan and a storage system. Both of those would be incorporated into the code. And then the section would read, for all projects exceeding 400 square feet, which results in a net increase of impervious surface, a stormwater storage system must be installed that effectively captures 1 inch of water per square foot of new impervious surface. The runoff from the new impervious surface should be directed to that storage. So essentially, we're saying, as the example in our agenda history sheet reads, if you are putting in a 500 square foot garage and you previously had a 380 square foot garage, you would be responsible for installing some type of volume control for approximately 120 square feet of new surface area, new coverage where rain isn't being absorbed into the ground. So it's aligns with our current practice of recommendation, and so we feel it's best to codify this this practice. And I'll take any questions. Thank you.
Any questions?
No.
Ms. Evans?
What does a stormwater storage system look like?
Yeah, most commonly people think about it as a dry well. So it would be a set cubic area, so a hole dug in usually a rectangle of some kind that's filled with a variety of layers of larger and smaller rock. There's some type of tarp or pipe that has holes punctured into it so that wherever the layers end up, the water infiltrates into that and can be stored in that area underground without, and have an opportunity for it to evaporate or otherwise recede into the ground slowly. So it's not running over the top of the ground. And so typically people have some type of drainage system that either the ground naturally slopes into that area or that's directed into that area by, a gutter or whatever it is coming off a detached garage, for example, into that drain area. So you can see the drain above the ground usually. You could see that, but there may be other areas where that soil, it would all drain into that dry well, so.
This can also be as simple as a rain garden too, correct?
Yeah, I mean, if there's something that would be, if their engineer or the person that's providing the plans can demonstrate that there would be water storage in that area, then yeah, I could see that example being used.
Mr. Pollak?
Ashley, you use the example of someone who had a 380 square foot garage, tore it down, replaced it with a 500 square foot garage.
Yep.
That's more than 400, so they have to compensate for the difference. What if you have a 380 square foot garage and you build a 120 square foot addition to it? Not touching, other than opening a wall maybe, not touching the existing garage.
Yeah. So then anything exceeding that 400 square feet, so if you're adding 20 feet and whatever you said, it was 120 feet
120
onto
square
it.
feet.
Yeah, so you'd account for that, 100 square feet beyond 400 square feet. I may be misunderstanding you, I'm sorry.
So the definition says, for all projects exceeding
Yes.
400 square feet, what defines the project? Like I said, if I have a 380 square foot garage and I'm adding 120 square foot, is that a 120 square foot project that's not subject to any of this? Or is that a 500 square foot project? To me, it seems like it's a 120 square foot
Because that's the
project,
addition.
and you don't have to do anything.
Yeah, the intent of this is not to, and current practice has not been to say, I'm going to do a project where I add 50 square feet to my house, and then I'm going to add another, 50 square feet to my garage or whatever it is, so that I get around this requirement. The intent is that if there's an area that is going to be covered in excess of 400 square feet, so if you rip out your driveway or you rebuild your existing garage and it exceeds that footprint, then, and at any point is that footprint bigger than 400 square feet, you'd have to account for the new surface coverage that you'd be
So
accounting for.
So again, just if I have a 380 square foot garage and I add a 120 square foot addition, I'm only adding 120 square feet of impervious surface.
Right.
Do I have to provide this stormwater storage?
Yes.
Then we need to change the wording of this
The wording.
if that's the way we want it.
Yeah,
That's not
it
what
was
this
written
says.
with your understanding in
Okay.
mind, so.
Yes.
That's a big difference, because that means if someone puts in a 20 square foot shed, they have to do this.
So Ashley, you in his example, the 380-foot garage is not being touched, they're just putting on an
Yeah.
addition,
No,
or the house or whatever.
Here's my question.
Okay.
And you mentioned the word driveway. You know, we have a lot of aging houses, we have a lot of very old driveways. You know, if you replace your driveway and it's more than 400 feet, you have to have the extra cost of putting in this stormwater storage system? Even though
No.
you're not adding to anything?
No, it's the new surface coverage. So if you were to
Okay.
say your driveway's 2,000 square feet and then you're adding 500 square feet to your driveway, then you would account for this. If it's in the
That's-
same
okay.
footprint, but it's bigger than 400 square feet, then you could leave it as
That's not what this
as
says.
is.
Well, it does, trustee Hannan, so after the 400 square feet, it says which results in a net increase of impervious surface.
Right,
So
but
the driveway is being
if
replaced
I
with that,
have,
right?
I'm replacing my driveway, and I add an extra inch,
Oh, okay.
so I have, and it's still on, so the threshold is, it's a project exceeding square feet, it results in a net increase. It doesn't say how much of a net
Yeah.
increase. I could have, the asphalt guy go, 1/2 millimeter over, and now I have to put in a storm drainage, which doesn't seem
Right.
the intent of this.
Yeah.
I mean, it should be a net increase of impervious surface of X,
Right.
of 400 feet, is that what we're saying?
Is that the current practice, that if the driveway was bigger, that you would ask for that?
No, if it's more, so if it's more than 400 square feet, then we do a grading review.
If what is more than 400 square feet?
Any project, so if there's an addition
A
or a
replacement or an
new,
addition?
a addition.
Okay,
you
so it's
have
not
a-
any project,
a
it's an
new-
addition.
Right.
It's an addition.
Right.
You're adding 400 square feet of impervious surface, is what you're saying.
Yes,
Okay, so that's not what this says.
okay.
The threshold isn't a project exceeding 400 feet. It's a project that results in a net increase of impervious surface of more than 400 square feet, right?
No, it's saying, it should say, and be exemplary of, if there's a project and you're putting a brand-new area of 400 square feet, or you're changing the footprint of something that exists, which is over 400 square feet, then the net new coverage would be accounted for with this surface area calculation.
But that net new coverage would have to be over 400 square feet in order for this to trigger.
No, it would say if you have a 400 square foot garage and you want to do 420 square feet garage, then you'd be accounting for
Let's
that
just say I
20
want to
square
replace the
feet.
400 square foot garage, and instead of it turned long ways, it's turned the other ways.
Yes,
Is that a project?
that would require a grading review and potentially offsetting with stormwater.
But if I keep it on its footprint,
There's no requirement because you're not changing, there's not a chance
but if I add a
of the,
centimeter, then I do?
well,
If-
it's typically not that
I'm just
de
wondering where the
minimis,
threshold
but
is.
that's a good question.
I'd like
you
a
know,
good answer.
Yeah.
I'm confused.
Mr. Pollack?
I'd like to suggest we ask staff to do some more work on this particular subject. I don't think we're going to get anywhere discussing it. We've brought up some
I agree.
key issues here.
I just think it needs
To
to be
me, the
tweaked.
bottom line is if I'm adding 50 square feet of impervious surface,
Yeah.
I shouldn't have to do
I agree.
this. But if I'm adding 200, 300, 400, whatever number we come up with, yes, at some point, sure. But I don't, or if I'm adding 2 inches to my driveway and replacing the whole driveway, I don't want to have to do underground stuff.
I think the other thing is, and again, I think the other is, if you're changing the grade is also this
Yes.
part of this too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which I think is a very important part of this, because the
Right.
grading is more influential to runoff than even impervious or pervious surface. So I think we just need to
Absolutely.
get those things in line. But I will say that I put in a stormwater retention in my backyard, and I used to have seepage in my basement and at least 6 inches of water in my driveway when we had heavy rains. And I get nothing now. It's worked perfectly.
Yeah.
So these things do work, but I know we have a lot of complaints in the village about stormwater runoff and how one home affects another, and any way we can do to mitigate that is beneficial. We just need to wrap our arms around it. So this is a very good start. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We'll come back with, some suggestions or recommendations as far as a threshold that we most commonly see. So if the engineer is reviewing something, at what point are they determining that this is required or not? This is the trigger, essentially, is that area and the changing of a footprint or grade. But if that change is de minimis in terms of that grade, and it won't dramatically impact it if you add an inch to the width of a driveway, then at what point do we require that? They all are different.
Right.
So it's might be a little bit tricky, but we'll come back with some
Right.
recommendations.
I mean, what?
I think one thing of note that is important is, this 400 square feet actually came directly from the code too, as it relates to grading permits.
Yeah.
And so that's what kind of tips the scale. So
Right.
we'll make sure to include that definition so you can kind of see that. But back to what I think Ashley was trying to express is that grading permit, so back to what Trustee Hannon was saying, if it's 400 and an inch, that's
Yep.
still gonna tip the scales for a grading permit requirement.
Correct.
And so if a person doesn't want to do a grading permit, then they modify the design of what their project is.
And that has happened.
So this is completely in alignment with the grading permit process of then requiring for.
So a cross-reference would be perfect.
What was that?
Well, a cross-reference to that
Yes.
would be solve everyone's ambiguity.
I believe so.
Okay.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for doing that.
Yeah.
Okay, we move on to the ordinance amending Title IV, Chapter 1, Village Code regarding refunds of certain permit fees. You're still on the hot seat.
I'm still here. I will end my tenure soon. Okay, so infrequently we receive requests to refund a permit fee or a portion of a permit fee for canceled building projects. The code currently doesn't have a provision that allows for us to do this, and so we have presented an opportunity to the examples given in the document breaks down when we would be able to refund a building permit fee, when we would not. Couple of highlights is just that in considering whether to refund any part of a building permit, we would go with whether any permitted work has started at this point, and it's not practical to transfer that permit to someone else. Typically, the property owner holds the permit and transfers it to another contractor. There may be cases where this is not feasible to do or practical to do for either the contractor or the owner. The total issued permit cost before a plan review fee and our plumbing or electrical inspections would have to exceed $1,000. Fees paid for the required inspections that haven't been conducted could be returned in full. And so we would also capture any direct costs of the village. We talked quite a bit about that when discussing fees today. So in that, we would mirror that. We would recover anything for plan review and staff costs to process the permit and refund the permit. And then we would also have to get joint permission from the contractor, from the homeowner, saying that we're ending this agreement and we're not proceeding with the permit. So the ordinance outlines the eligibility for refunds and the conditions, and leave it to you for any discussion or questions.
Thank you. Any discussions? Again, it looks like what we're trying to do is capture our fees and be reasonable with both the resident and a contractor if they should move on. This gives us the opportunity to trigger a refund. Am I summarizing that?
Yes, thank you.
45-degree angle? Okay. If I can have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Motion by trustee Gallego, second.
Second.
Trustee Marshaga. Ethan, if you'd please call the roll.
Trustee Evans.
Aye.
Trustee Gallegos.
Aye.
Trustee Marshaska.
Aye.
Trustee Hannan.
Aye.
Trustee Pollock.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Before we move on to the last thing, something struck me when we were talking about the accessory structures. There was some discussion in there about the square footage being 100 or 150 square feet to limit. That's not even a two-car garage. How do we get around? I mean, if you want a two-car garage, its minimum is 20 by 20 or 24 by 24. So are we saying two-car garages can't have this addition?
No, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's one of the issues I referenced that still need to be resolved.
Okay, if you could just put a check on that one. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, I forgot I wrote it down, but Jessica hands me a new sheet every time, so I forgot about it. Trustee reports and cross-climate collaboration updates. Trustee Marshaga and Trustee Evans, whichever one would like to start.
Okay.
Or both.
Well, I'll start. We're very excited, as I mentioned at the last meeting, to be building a sustainability team for Riverside, which will be an ad hoc, non-village specific organization. So Trustee Evans and I have been recruiting team members to lead the different priority areas within the C4's system of sustainability priorities. So we have most of the point people identified, and we will soon be meeting and basically developing a strategy or an approach to engaging the public on sustainability issues. The basic priority system of the C4 will be that we attend the C4, Kristen and I will attend the C4 monthly meetings, and then in leading the local sustainability team, convey information to them, and then the point people for each of the different priority areas will then develop subcommittees based on interaction with the public, and we can sort of tease out what the residents in our village and our stakeholders are all concerned about in terms of climate equity and community resiliency. And, from that, work with the C4's consultants to develop proposals and action plans. So that's sort of what we have going. And the next item on the actual docket will be the next C4 group meeting between all of the 16 different communities. So that will be happening on the last Tuesday of this month.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah. I'm confused. I'm reading the imperatives commitment, and I understand the last one, climate protection. I understand I'm trying to get my arms around the first two and how that translates into a climate action plan.
Okay, well, so a climate action plan is not only a climate action plan, it also has to take into account things like place and prosperity, the health and well-being of people within the community. You know, in terms of equity, there are certain populations that are more impacted by dramatic climate change events. You know, the elderly and the disabled tend to suffer ill health effects to a greater extent than the rest of the population. Those would be things to keep in mind. People that do not have English as their first language, or who are economically disadvantaged, also tend to not have access to those things in our community that are necessary. So equity is an important piece of building a long-term plan that takes climate changes and extreme weather events and, you know, time into account, because we want to have a healthy community that's able to respond to these things. So that would be the equity piece. The resilience piece would be where your service providers, like your utilities and your municipal services and your police and your ambulance people, are able to quickly respond and dynamically respond to emergencies. But a lot of this also has to do with working together with other communities, which is why we're part of this C4 West Suburban Connection. So we're building these things and looking at potential effects within our own community, but also talking to other communities about what they are doing to just expand all of this and be more dynamic and responsive in the future.
Okay,
I hope that makes sense.
well,
I could
what you
add-
said
I
is
could
different
add
than what's on the
about
page.
equity piece.
Yeah.
There's one
Yeah.
little piece that wasn't mentioned, and it's just the foundation of the C4 program. The C4 collaboration, it's a group of 13 nearby municipalities that work across income lines to achieve agreed-upon greenhouse gas emission reductions, equity, and sustainability goals. So the 13 municipalities are communities, you know, of different income levels. We have, some have more resources than others. And so by joining this collaborative and coming up with our own sets of initiatives through the sustainability team, we can again rejoin and see, you know, where they might overlap, and then partner and conjoin resources to reach the goals.
So if I may, thank you. It's looking to create that regional impact, right? So it may be that the village of Riverside can roll out certain things and partner with maybe Brookfield or North Riverside on something. And while it could be value added to, let's say, the RB community, it may not necessarily inherently do something for a Riverside resident, but we're trying to be part of that more West Cook regional impact. Because while we might not initially benefit from it, long-term, we'll be benefiting by doing these different pieces.
And climate does not have boundaries.
No, and I'm trying to get this equity concept, which I understand, I get, I support, how it impacts how it impacts climate action. I'm still lost, and what I'm hearing is that this is a path to commit village resources to spend in economically distressed areas outside of the village.
No. First, there's no cost to this at all.
Then why is it before the board?
Because this is an update. This is something that we joined. We're trying to, work with our other villages to put together a climate action plan for that works for our village. But these are broad goals that cover 13 different communities. So some are more in other communities, some are more in our community. And this is truly, we are just scratching the surface. When we were on the phone call the other day, we thought we were so far behind. When we talked about what we've done, just some of even as simple as letting Swan Pond go natural, these people couldn't believe how far we are. What they bring to the table is, we talked about charging stations. And, what kind of charging stations? These people have the resources to help us get grants, to know the different charging, to know the lease versus rent, to know charge versus not charge, to have that data. And we're getting all of that for basically the mass amount of time that Trustee Marshazga and Trustee Evans are putting into this. So this is a no cost to our village.
Okay.
And I want it to be on the board so they can give us an update. And I think as we move forward over the coming months, some of these answers will come more clear, because I know they're not clear to me either, to be honest with you.
Okay. I just wanted to make, I believe I voted against this the first time it came around because I didn't understand the commitment that was being asked of the village and what we're buying into. I still don't. So hopefully, over time, we will.
I think we'll find out, and then I think the resources we get from them will be helpful, and the commitment is, again, a very heavy volunteer commitment by two of our board members.
Great.
That are working very hard. So thank you. Thanks, Aberdeen. Thank you, Kristen, for all the work. Yes.
So I just want to add that the Lions Club had a presentation from the high school ecology club, and Mr. Monty, who heads that up, and so a lot of things that you guys are embarking upon, it really is exciting. It is. So I hope that when you come back and build your sustainability team, you include them in the community.
Yeah.
I brought my 5-year-old teacher that I had when I was in ecology club. It was just exciting how far we've come. We used to have drives for recycling cans and newspapers, and now it's just part of our everyday living. So, making these habits, they will last a long time. That's just proof of sustainability. So I applaud all your efforts.
Thank you, Trustee Gallegos. We move on. Is there any more trustee reports for this evening? I'm sorry. Okay, hearing none, the board has need for an executive session tonight to discuss the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body, the acquisition of real estate, and to discuss the settling of a price or sale of lease of village property. The village will not reconvene, and no final action will take place. So I would ask for a motion, a second, to adjourn to executive session.
So moved to executive session.
Motion by Trustee Gallegos, second by
Second.
Trustee Marshazga. Ethan, if you'd please call the roll.
Trustee Evans.
Aye.
Trustee Gallegos.
Aye.
Trustee Marshazga.
Aye.
Trustee Hannan.
Aye.
Trustee Pollock.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, everyone.